Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and cultural management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, founder and principal consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this episode, I would like to take that helper function that calculated our average and use it to populate the average salary and the average experience based on what is in this field. Now, we could easily just do it by having this, once it's changed or entered, we trigger a function and that function will come back and then do the calculation and bring it back. And then we could do it that way, but we already have the data that we want to filter or that we want to use for our average right here. We just need to pull out the salary from the experience. And if we remember what we did here, we actually created these various filters. So really what we want is just the data that's being used to populate that current scatter plot. So let's go ahead and just jump right in here. So let's come over to our code, and where we want to grab this data is after it comes over from our Google Apps script side. So we first fetch the data and draw the chart. So this is getting it. And then once it gets it with success, it's going to run this. So this variable or this parameter here that's being passed contains all of that data. And then what we do is we get ready to define and structure our table, and we use this for each to actually populate that stuff. So this is where we would want to grab the data and kind of carve out the salary from the experience and the gender. So let's go ahead and just do that right quick. Let's create a variable. Let's think about how we're going to want to do this. So we are going to need to take this data that's coming here to us, which is an object, and we are going to need to create a array based on that object. Now we're already cutting apart that object and turning it into an array here. So what we can simply do is create outside of this for each a different variable. Let's just call this variable salaries. And we need to use let here because we're going to be filling this array will consistently be changing and being filled with whatever data is being passed to our table here. So now let's figure out a way to fill this array. Now we already have this chart data broken down into an array. So all we need to do now is to take that and fill this salaries empty array with the row salary. So what we can do with that, since we're dealing with an array, is we call this variable, and then we can simply do push. And what we're going to push to that array is the row salary, that value. And this is going to run every single time it encounters an element. So for every element, it's going to do this. So it's going to take it one by one, run this, and then it's going to run this. So now we will actually have an array to essentially send over to our Google Apps script side. Now, one thing that we should keep in mind is when we do UIs like this, we should really give a lot of thought on where these calculations and functions work in. And what I mean by that is, do we want the functions to run on our client side or our server side, our Google Apps script side? If we send it over to the Google Apps script side, we have to wait for it to come back. So there's a little bit of a performance lag there, but that's okay. We'll give it a shot. So that's the approach we'll take initially. And if we're having some lag issues, then what we will do is we will just pull that back over to our JavaScript side. And I'll tell you the reason why I personally feel it's okay to have it here on our JavaScript side is because of the access to this form. We're seeing a scatter plot of all the data points anyway. So whoever has authorization to find that scatter chart and view it also has authorization to view each and individual salary. That's the theory behind that. But let's try and send it to our Google Apps script side. So what we're going to want to do is then send this to Google Script Run. And this is going to need to be a success handler. And for now, we'll just call that pop av salary. And we need to send this data over to our calculate average function. And we are going to pass to that function the salaries. So now what we're going to need to do is go into our total rewards.js and create this pop av salary function. Pop av salary. And this is simply going to take, it's going to receive that return value, and we'll just call that AV. And what we're going to want to do is populate that inside our salary field. Comp av salary is the ID. So let's grab that. And we want to populate get element by ID, and that ID is going to be this. And we want to set the value to whatever is being passed. So it's going to be this av. Okay, so now let's save this and see what happens. And I'm purposefully leaving this here. If you caught what I'm doing, I'm purposely leaving this here to illustrate how the for each actually works. So let's come back here and refresh this. Okay, you see that? It's getting there. It lands. Oh, we need to put that 2 fixed at 2 back. Excuse me. So let's refresh this and watch this av salary field. So we do need to put the 2 fixed back in here, but did you see how it went through a whole series of numbers? And we'll do, let's do the executive, and you'll see exactly what I mean. See how it's changing? It's going through numbers and then landing on one. The reason it's doing that is because what for each does, remember, it goes through every single element and then it runs a function or a block of code on that element. So what we're doing is if there was 5 data points on that scatter plot, it's running this 5 times. And then it's populating it, then running it again, then populating it. So we're actually seeing it in action. And it's kind of it's kind of unnerving. But the reason it's doing that is because it's within this for each. So now let's see what happens when we grab this and put it outside the for each, like so. And then we'll save it and then come back over here and refresh it. Now, it's not going to run it every single time. It's just going to run it once it gets done with that for each. So let's refresh it. And you'll see it just will populate a specific number. So now that is, let's look at this again. I'm looking at the performance and how slow it goes. A lot of this has to be based on our internet connection or how many browsers we have or whatnot. It's not terribly slow. Let me fix this. Let's go fix this decimal thing here real quick. So what we can do is add 2 fixed right here, and we'll do 2 decimal places. Okay, so we'll save that, and then what we'll do is come back over here and refresh it to pick that up, and we should come down to our 2 decimal places. Okay, so there's that. We can add some formatting here, but not terribly slow. But let's try it a different way and see if it speeds up. So instead of doing it this way and sending it over to our Google Apps script side to run the calculation and then send it back, since whoever has access to view this to begin with also has access to view the salaries. Because the one thing that we don't want to do, if this is public facing, what you could simply do is hit F12. And I know you're not seeing it because it's a different window, but F12 will bring up the console log and the elements, and you're able to sometimes actually dig into the code and see like the values and whatnot. But since this is only going to be shared with a very select authorized group, we could put it on the JavaScript side. So let's go ahead and come in here and do that. What we will do is we will grab this code right here. Let's just copy it for now. Come over to our total rewards.js. And then instead of even having to call this, we can simply just put this function in here. Because remember, if we simply attempt to directly call this function from our HTML JavaScript side, it's not going to work until it has this connection in here, until we're specifically saying we want to run an app script. So let's come back over here to not our operations, our total rewards page. And instead of doing this, what we could do is simply create a variable, and let's just go on with what we were having. And this average salary is then going to be equal to that function. And you'll see now that the function is popping up because it has access to it. And we're going to want to pass the salaries. But we don't want it in here. We don't want it in the for each. We want it outside of the for each. And then we want to document get element by ID. The ID is comp salary. And then what we want to do is set the value to this equal to this variable right here. Because this is going to run, it's going to do its calculation, and then it's going to return that average. And this is saying run it, and I want that value. And I'm going to store it in this variable here. So now if we save this and then run it, let's see if that changed any speed. So let's refresh it, populate up. That is much quicker. It's almost immediate when it does this. So I'm going to leave this in the JavaScript side. And again, the reason why I was debating on it was simply because there is a way that you can, either hit F12 if you're in Windows or right click and inspect, and you're able to actually inspect what's occurring here in this web page. And you're only able to see the client side stuff, not the server side stuff. So anything, it's important to remember this, anything that you do not want individuals to see that may not have access to, don't put it in your client side. Have it all run on your server. But since everybody has access to this and the data anyway, it's fine to just populate that. that is much quicker. So we're going to leave it there. So let's go take care of this and do some cleanup. Okay. And we'll come up here to our this, and we will just get rid of that. And then I will go back and take this helper function, and I'm going to still put it in our utilities, because what I could do is have this run a different way, which we may do in the future. But for right now, we'll just leave it here in our JS. Okay, good. So now we have our salaries. Now what we need to do is our average experience. So our average experience, we can essentially do the same exact thing. So let's come up here, and remember we created a salaries piece. So let's create experience, and that is also going to be an empty array. And once it does this and populates that array, we would like it to do the same exact thing for our experience. And we're going to have to see how much this slows down, because we may have to do something different, but it shouldn't be substantial now that we moved it into our Java app script. So once it runs the salaries, we would like it to run, oops, interesting, calculate average. And this time, we're not going to pass the salaries to it. We're going to pass the experience. And then we want to populate our comp average. I'm going to make sure I get our title right. Comp average EXP. And we want to set the value equal to, now not the average salary, but the average experience. Okay, good. So let's save this and then see what we come up with. Okay, let's refresh it. And perfect. So if we were looking at all of our data right here, we can see that as a company, our average salary is $87,479.96. And our average experience, not time with company, but our average experience is 11.23. Now we could easily add in the time in current. We have a time in current role. So we could easily add in two more fields here. Average time at company, time in class. And then what we would need to do is simply just add on those fields. Now, what I would like to do, instead of just adding everything onto this compensation page, if you think about our whole employee data, our whole employee data contains everything that we need in this compensation field. It has the time with the company, date entered position, time and current position. The one thing that we don't have is a column for total experience, which we can easily add. But my point is that we can just grab all of this employee data and then carve out the pieces that we need to construct our own compensation virtual data set, so to speak. So I'm going to end this video, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and add on a lot more data here, because if you look, we only have 50. And if we're doing if we're like looking at department in finance, we don't have too many employees there. Same with IT. We just don't have a lot of information to really run an analysis on. So I'm going to boost up our data set probably up to about 500 random employees. So then we can really start seeing some data. And then the next video, what we will do is we will connect this whole employee data set, carve out what we need using the tools and the functions that we already have created. We just need to change them up a little bit. So thank you for your time. I hope this has been helpful. And if you like what we're doing, please hit that subscribe button so we know to continue to bring you this type of episodes. And if you have an idea on something that you would like us to cover or have question, please shoot us an email. Our email's in that description box, and we'll be happy to see what we can do. And until next time, please take care.